name is Grace Morrissey.
And we're from Marywood University. And are we good to start?
Yeah, you're good.
Excellent. So throughout the course of this presentation, we'll be representing a consulting firm addressing the Judges Energy Public Corporation, who is currently looking to venture into Pennsylvania for fracking industry. And we've returned to elaborate on the ethical dilemmas. So to begin with, what is fracking? Fracking is just the process of drilling into the ground and injecting a high-pressure water, sand, and chemical solution in order to crack the shale below and release gas, which then travels up a well and is collected as an energy source. So some of the concerns that surround fracking include the laws and regulations and some of the national laws we are going to address, and some of the loopholes which occur during these laws for the fracking industry. First, there's the Safe Drinking Water Act, which just regulates the underground injections. However, it excludes any injections done in pursuit of oil and gas, with the exception of diesel fuel. So therefore, the company can inject whatever they want into the ground, except for the diesel, without needing to comply with the other regulations. There's the Clean Water Act, which basically regulates the discharge of any water into streams, rivers, creeks, etc., and it excludes any stormwater runoff from the fracking industry. The Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act requires disclosure of any chemical storage, release, quantities, transfers, etc., and it excludes any wastes that are done from the fracking industry. Resource conservation provides a framework for managing solid waste, but it excludes any waste done from oil and gas pursuits. And the Clean Air Act just regulates the discharge of any greenhouse gases. However, individual wells are not seen as a major source of pollution, and therefore they don't have to comply with all of the regulations of the Act. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because a lot of the chemical waste and environmental pollutants for the fracking industry are excluded from these different acts. But is it really about the letter of the law or the spirit of the law that we should be adhering to? Because we're only required to adhere to the letter of the law, but they are there for a reason. The reason that these loopholes came in is because the fracking industry has a lower environmental impact than other fossil fuel resources, but nonetheless it is still damaging to the environment in comparison to other potential energy resources. So Grace is going to go into some reasons why these present some ethical dilemmas.
Several ethical dilemmas. So let's jump in. So the situation JEC finds itself in is absolutely an ethical issue because many factors are at play. They're all vying for primary consideration. So that involves business, legal, environmental, social, and then obviously ethical perspectives that are all vying for attention. There's an opportunity for JEC to operate in a way that solely maximizes profit for the short term. And that would also be operating within the confines of the law, which is obviously legally acceptable. But in doing this, that would disregard the interests of all of the stakeholders who are involved. And although this would result in short-term profit, which is excellent for the business, it would cause real and serious consequences for stakeholders who ought to be considered because their interests ought not be neglected. So stakeholders that can be considered are the local community as well as the local environment. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why JEC should not go this route. JEC ought to be transparent in your processes, directly you, and your decisions, and we ask that you make your intentions clear. The primary concern regarding your intentions and your processes should include the stakeholders, which is more than just the company. As a part of your intentions, we ask that you try your best to prevent unnecessary harms. And the primary reason for this is because stakeholders are affected by all of the harms. However, only few are reaping the benefits from this process. And so all of these who are potentially harmed must be considered, especially since most of the stakeholders don't have a very strong voice in the decision, and in regard to the environment have no voice at all. So JEC must consider and treat all stakeholders fairly and maintain their stability and their integrity, and that's in regard to the community and in regard to the environment. And this refers to the company as well, and the land and the future, both in regard to the future of our environment and the future of our community, but also the future of the industry, as fracking is known as just a transitional energy resource. We ask that JEC avoid unethical practices, and honestly the only way to get out of unethical practices is to leave the unethical framework in which the industry is placed. Unfortunately, competitors are reinforcing this framework who are taking advantage of these legal loopholes that Ellen spoke of, and they're only adhering to the letter of the law, which here is the absolute crux of the ethical issue. Instead, we ask that you operate within a new paradigm and establish an entirely new industry standard that takes the interests of all involved very, very seriously. So this framework will create a position where the CEOs, the employees, the community, they're all working together in order to benefit all of their combined ethics and their combined shared values, which is unbelievably important because everybody is affected in this situation. And so that's framed by the benefits and harms and who's benefiting from these and then who is being affected negatively from the fracking industry. So the solution that we propose to you is twofold. We offer that you utilize a greener energy way of doing fracking, which our research has shown captures the methane in a way of filtration systems. And that's methane is 20 times more potent in catalyzing global climate change than carbon dioxide. So this is an unbelievably important greenhouse gas that we would be capturing through this greener energy filtration system that we ask that you do. Furthermore, we ask that you take 3% of your gross profit and establish a little bit of research, a little bit of investment in sustainable resources and in regard to newer and greener energy resources. That could be wind, solar, geothermal, anything that you find would be financially or ethically sustainable in regard to energy. And now Ellen is just going to offer why all of this matters, why you as the company need to consider these.
And I'm certain that the one question going through your mind as a business person is why? Why would I take these greener routes when everyone else is not taking these greener routes and is affecting the environment in such a poor way that it doesn't seem as though one company would make a difference? What's really important to realize is that there are thresholds for the environment, and we don't know where these thresholds are, but any one thing could tip over the scale, and therefore we need to be considerate as a company and as a person of the environment. Sustainability is the ability for you to take the resources that you need to uphold yourself without compromising the future's ability to use the same resources. And gas being not a renewable resource means that eventually this is going to run out. So therefore we propose that you utilize as much of this process as you possibly can by collecting the methane, but also using the greener energy to transfer your company over to a more sustainable process of gas collection, energy collection. And so as a public company, hopefully having an unlimited lifespan, you will be able to sustain yourself over an indefinite amount of time. And as a person, it's just what you should be doing for your own personal sake, for your grandkids, great-grandkids, so somewhere down the road they will still have a green life.
And lastly, just from the business perspective, we do understand that factoring into the ethics is the financial viability of these options. And we do admit to you freely that these two things that we ask you to do will require you to put more money up front, and that may seem to tether you a little bit more to the financial and a little bit less to the ethical. Within our research, we did find that most of these things will really promote the longevity of your company and will result in profit for the long term. However, that is not the point. Regardless of how expensive this may be in the short term or the long term, you must consider the stakeholders at hand. And that's the most important thing. And us as your consulting company, that's what we find to be most important.
Thank you. Set this.